Today is Monday, September 27th, 2021, and the school committee is in session at 5:32 p.m. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Agenda item number 2, our school committee member introductions.
Bruce Damon, Ward 1.
Janet Bowden, Ward 2.
Ward 3. Sorry, should have told you that ahead of time.
This one? Okay. This is my first meeting, so I'm learning how to work the microphone. Just a quick introduction. I work at Bates College and I teach in chemistry and biochemistry, and I'm really looking forward to being involved in the community. Thank you.
Welcome to the committee.
And can you state your name?
She did.
Not on, oh. She did it.
Jake Langley, Superintendent.
Megan Parks at large.
Tanya Whitlow, Ward 4. Linnea Hawkins, Ward 5.
Ron Potman, Ward 6.
Paul Bopelant, Ward 7.
Luke Jensen, City Council Representative.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3, introduction of the new school committee member. I didn't even realize that was the next item. Since you just introduced yourself, I will skip that. Agenda item number 4, the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any members would like set aside? Seeing none, the consent agenda is adopted. Agenda item number 5, to receive and approve the nomination for the special ed director position. And Superintendent Langlis will present.
So as you know, we had a recent transition, and I'm very excited to share the nomination, Kirsten Crafts. Kirsten comes to us to the central office in a leadership role that I think is critical to our schools, but also something that both I and the committee have been very open about, an area that we wanted to improve. And I think having someone that can communicate well and be very organized will be a great first step in how we look at special education programming at Lewis Public Schools. Kirsten comes to us with experience. I worked with her at the high school. She was a special ed teacher for a while. She taught regular ed at the high school. She was a special education supervisor at the high school for was it 2 years? 2 years, and then became an assistant principal with the leadership team at the high school and has had success there. And so I would like to forward Kirsten Crafts as nominee for the new special education director.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Before we vote, Chris, would you like to speak? There you go.
There you go.
Am I on? Okay. It's a bittersweet day, actually. I'm very excited for this new opportunity, but I also love being at the high school. So I'm a little sad about that, leaving them, but I'm happy to help more kids out. So I think it's the right move. So, and thank you, Jake, for having faith in me.
Any school committee member comments? Ms. Bowden?
I would just like to say that I think this is a perfect nomination for this position, and I'm really excited to see what you can bring to help our special ed program get back on track where it should be. And I think you nailed it with this one. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, ahead of time. I'll be voting yes.
Thank you. Any other comments? Member Putman?
Ms. Crafts, I just want to say in the 2 years I've been serving, you've gotten a lot of positive reports with people dealing with you, the parents, the teachers, students, so forth. So I'm really happy to see you taking on this opportunity, and I'm hopeful with your experience that as special ed director, we'll get even more people happy with your performance in that area. And I thank you for taking on the challenge. Good luck.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All votes start with Ward 1 tonight. So Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4, yes, 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
7,
Yes.
City Council,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Kirsten.
Agenda item number 6 is public input. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now or on agenda items later. Comments that pertain to staff, personal matters, or a student issue should be directed to the superintendent or the appropriate staff member of Lewiston Public Schools. Public comments shall be directed to the school committee and be brief, not repetitive, and related to the matter at hand. Before starting, please state your name, address, and affiliation with Lewiston Public Schools. Are there any members of the public present that would like to speak? If so, please approach the podium.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jessica Philippon. I'm a resident of Lewiston. I have a daughter who attends Lewiston Middle School, and I'm also a teacher at McMahon Elementary. The reason why I'm here this evening is I would like the dress code to be looked at and possibly updated, or really updated. Here's some background. My daughter came home from school last Thursday, and she told me it was the worst day she's had at school. Talking to her, she told me that she, along with 6 other female identifying students, were dress coded. My daughter went to school with a pair of high-rise jeans, a long sleeve cardigan, and a black shirt underneath that showed no more than 2 inches of her stomach, not including her navel. Her navel was covered up. She was pulled aside and told that she was revealing too much and she was forced to change. After talking with other parents, I found that there were the other reasons why girls were dress coded were leggings were too revealing, from a student that was wearing an oversized sweatshirt, a pair of black leggings, and a pair of socks that went up over her jeans, but her leggings were too revealing. Another student's jeans had too many holes in them. And another student, her sweatpants were not appropriate and also too revealing. I don't buy into the claim that a dress code's in place, that it can disrupt and distract student learning. We need to change a rule that is disproportionately enforced against females and those who identify as females. I have a problem with the message that we're giving our children. If someone is having a reaction to the way that you're dressed, that it's your fault and you need to change. It's a form of victim blaming that needs to come to an end. Since my daughter has been dress coded, she takes extra time in the morning and she second guesses herself. My girl has had awful battles with scoliosis. She had a 45-degree bend in her spine and had to wear a brace from her armpits down to her hip for over a year. She hated everything about herself, and she is finally starting to become comfortable in her skin, only to be pulled aside to be told she can't wear what she's wearing. I challenge you to please look at those victims that are being dress coded and check out the demographic that it's affecting. If it's predominantly females, we have a problem. It needs to be changed and it needs to be updated, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members?
Hi, my name is Ella Bowden. I'm from Ward 6.
I'm Emma Mills, and I'm from Ward 1.
We attend Lewiston Middle School as 8th graders on Team Haleakala and Glacier.
And we would like to bring to your attention the recent events caused by the dress code at our school.
On Thursday, September 23rd, over 10 girls were dress coded over midriff, leggings, and even jeans that had too many holes. As one of the girls who was dress coded that day, I can tell you that it was definitely frustrating that I was expected to change into my sweaty gym clothes because my shirt didn't touch my pants.
Every day we see other students being pulled aside and told that either their shirt is too short, their leggings are too revealing, or they are showing too much cleavage. There are other students who are allowed to express themselves by wearing dog collars, fishnets, ears, etc. But when we try to show our personality in the clothing that we wear, we are told it is inappropriate and distracting.
Under Tier 1, Section B of the dress code, it specifically states spiked collars and chains cannot be worn because they are considered weapons and unsafe. But people are still able to walk the halls wearing them without anything being said to them. The consistency of girls getting dress coded because of their clothing choices compared to other students getting told to take off their spiked jewelry has a major difference.
The dress code was last updated in 2015, and if you haven't noticed, the style has changed since then. If you walk into almost any store, it is likely that over half of the tops would be too short for the teacher's liking. Majority of teens go shopping with a parent, and if the adult that is purchasing it was not okay with them wearing it, then they wouldn't have bought it for them in the first place.
We've also noticed that not all teachers feel or address the situation the same, but some teachers are more lenient than others. If other students are dressed just like you, but have a different teacher, how is it fair that they can continue to wear the same outfit, but you are asked to cover up? How do you think this makes us feel? We are taught to express ourselves and be comfortable with who we are. Instead, teachers are bringing us down and making us feel insecure. If others are allowed to express themselves by wearing costumes and wigs to school, why are we called out for wearing trendy clothes?
A few months ago, the middle school dress code was brought up by a group of students who wanted to see the hat policy change. We don't believe this was ever brought up for a vote, so we'd love to see this topic discussed again so we can bring the dress code policy up to date.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Are there any other members present, community members present that would like to speak? Are there any online attendees that would like to speak for public comment? Seeing none, we will move along to agenda item number 7 to receive an, oh, it popped up. Is it not working, Karen? Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, my name is Kim Harding, and I just would like to express my concern for the dress code along with them. My daughter, back when she was in middle school, which was about 10 years ago, she wore shorts every day to school, even through the winter, and never once got, it was always a joke that she was wearing shorts and so forth. Well, when it came appropriate time for shorts and so forth, she too got dress carded or whatever it's called. Apparently shorts weren't supposed to be like any higher than a few inches above the knee. A teacher pulled her aside and asked her, there were a group of girls, they had to put their hands down just to make sure that the shorts that, matched the measure, their fingertips to their shorts. She happened to have short fingers, so she was okay. But what I find interesting is that she wore them all winter and nothing was ever said. And then comes spring. So like I said, this is like good 10 years ago. And I'm really surprised that we as a district haven't come up with a better policy. I do know a couple of the girls that did just get coded, and it's very shocking because they are well-rounded students. So if you would please take the time to, go over the policy one more time, that would be great. Thank you.
Member Bulfeldt?
Yes, before we move on, I'd like to discuss this issue before it gives the appearance of being buried. Again, I often refer to my experience as a classroom teacher across the river. Ladies, women, this is not located this side of the river. It's universal. It is sexist. It is arbitrary. There's no clear-cut line. Certainly, we don't want people with T-shirts that say obscenities or anyone that's going to cause a disruption. You make a very good point about jewelry that could be hazardous. And if you are correct, they have no reason to think that you're not. If the last dress code was instituted in 2015, I think it's time that people get together, school board rep, which I'd be willing to volunteer for, administration, students, and teachers to try to bring it together to have something that is workable. Now, it's never going to be finite. And I certainly don't want to have to say how many inches down or how many inches of skin, but we need to look at it from each other's perspective. that yes, at times it may be a disruption, but again, at times it may be fashion, and fashion has changed over the years. So Jake, I don't know where we go with this, but I'd like you to
He was
look
about to
into it, and I'd like to volunteer to be the school board rep on it. I think these ladies would be, young ladies would be very effective representatives of their age and gender. I just don't want to be too structured, but I want to see this issue solved. It's not going to go away on its own, and there are many different points of view on it. And let's get it out in the open. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I would like to start by thanking with the parent and also the students for doing a great job expressing themselves and sharing their concerns. So we're on board with you. Great job. And I don't know if you'll say yes right now, but we'd love for you to be a part of that group to work on some language. Last June, we did look at a policy as a first read that significantly changed the dress code policy. And there was a lot of mixed feelings about the timing of that because school was essentially going out of session. And so we had talked about this fall, when school's back in and the dust settled, that we would start some groups to look at this. And I think now is just about the right time. And so I'm fully in favor, and I'll reach out to you and we can find a way to get this rolling.
Thank you. Agenda item number 7, to receive an update regarding busing.
So I'll also have joining me Alyssa Roman, who is a Director of Transportation and Nutrition for Lewis Public Schools. Also over to the side here, we have Dawn Rancourt, who I don't know how she does it. There's hundreds of pieces to everyday buses running for our district, and Dawn does a great job navigating all of that. And Alyssa does a great job too. So just want to start with kind of a 1,000-foot overview, just really trying to shed light to the fact that we'll kind of do the summary first. Staffing is really hard right now across the board, every industry, everywhere. And it is no different in transportation. And what Dawn and Alyssa have worked to do is to put together a 1,000-piece puzzle that is missing about 300 pieces. And so we have transportation happening. We have kids moving to and from school safely. We've had some hiccups that they've worked through that happen, I think, at the start of every year. But this is a real situation I want the public to hear, but also you to hear, that day to day, we are trying to make sure we can navigate busing because of our numbers, a number of drivers. And Alyssa will share more, but we're starting to plan. We've already started planning what might happen if we get a phone call tomorrow morning. We have 2-3 drivers out sick, COVID or not COVID related. We have a problem. And Alyssa will share some more details about that and the work that's been doing around that. And before we dive in, I want to thank them both publicly for all the hard work they've done to try to create an efficient run of over 200 runs.
Thank you, Jake, and good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Alyssa Roman, Director of Nutrition and Transportation. So what Jake was speaking to is absolutely right. We have over 200 plus routes that we do daily. And when we're looking at those routes, that's our pre-K, that's our after-school programming, that's our general ed programming for high school, middle school, grade school, everyone in between. So 200 plus routes were considered a major district in the state, and so major that the state had to upgrade their servers to accommodate the new routing software that's coming online. They could not hold our data. So we're actually forced them to upgrade some technology, which I'm actually kind of excited about. So with those 200 plus routes, that requires approximately 29 buses to do that, full-size buses. You have budgeted for 29 buses. Thank you very much for that. But today we have 27 buses that are running. So we have the 29 buses, they're all on the lot, but 27 of those buses are running. And one could argue that we're using 25 of them for our general education routes because 2 of those are used for our St. Dom's and also for, I'm missing the other route. St. Dom's, yeah, they're running for St. Dom's. So we're running 2 buses right now for those. That's part of our city charter that existed from the 80s. So that's where that comes from. With that being said, on any given day, if we are down 4 drivers, we encounter a problem. And those 4 drivers being absent could be from various things, whether it's maternity leave or someone having a wedding or various cases of things going on. For the most part, even with 4 drivers down, we're able to do some finagling with our van drivers to make sure kids are getting from point A to point B. Those 200 routes include us busing to the Woodford, special ed runs, Brunswick, Auburn. I'm trying to think of all the places, Green, Turner. We're busing all over the place with vans, with buses. We're trying to do the most optimized routes possible. So if kids can go together on a minibus, we're sending them on a minibus if we have that driver. There is a national CDL driver shortage. This has been before COVID. It affects not only my busing, it affects my nutrition department with tractor trailer drivers as well as bus drivers. It is a field that is highly, highly needing drivers, certified drivers. Hudson, I actually commend them for doing work. While we're short those 2 drivers, they have 2 that are in training. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to get them fully trained. There is an incentive for them to work with Hudson. We do have some bus drivers that are looking around at other districts, and Hudson is looking to retain them as well. I'm in constant updating with Karen, with Jake, and anyone else that will listen, quite honestly, onto our busing, because I want to make sure that is not an issue as far as getting our kids to be in the educational setting that they need to be in. Last year, we had cohorts, as we all know. So busing was very different. There were some different guidelines and rules. And I really want to commend, again, Don Rancourt for finagling and working with our administration to make sure those routes ran successfully. But this is our first year in a while that we have run fully. Everyone's on board, and we do bus between 2,500 and 3,000 students daily, which is quite a big feat for our district. So we're working all the time on coverages and callouts. And one of the things that came to my attention, we do expect Hudson as part of their contract to man the terminal and to have that radio on hand to reach out and facilitate with the buses as needed. Over the course of the few weeks of school being open, we have a radio now in the central office. So in case everyone in the terminal has to drive, we can still facilitate that conversation between busing and schools to make sure that our kids are located, that they get from point A to point B. We also have some technology that we have access to we did not before in previous years, which enables us to look at the GPS at any given time of those buses. And even as soon as last Friday, we were able to find some optimized routes to make it so we could make sure that Geiger Elementary got out on time. So that was in place today, and I was happy to find out that the last bus left at 3:26, which was perfect. So we had a happy administrator there. So we're constantly tweaking and looking at routes. It's not to say, though, that we don't run into some daily struggles where we have a road that's closed because they're doing sewer lining that we weren't aware of, that the YMCA or YWCA chooses not to have programs, and they forget to tell us, or that a site that we use special education for needs to send their kids home because they have an emergency and we need to get buses from A to B. So we definitely have those day-to-day things that happen, traffic lights, accidents, that could potentially delay our transport, but the whole idea is to optimize that. This year also, we made great strides to try and make some more alignment with our timing and our busing to allow for the buses to show up at certain schools. So they go from the middle school and the high school, and then they hit Montello and Connors, which facilitated a slight change in the start and end of the day, which takes a little getting used to, but I can say it's running much more smoothly now that we've been a couple weeks into the programming. So I think getting everyone back in, getting used to our busing and back into the routine of school has been a little bit of a challenge. But as I look down, the phone calls are a lot less, and they're more focused on how can we make it better for the district is the overall goal at this point. So I don't know if you have any specific questions that we can answer or anything else you would like me to cover.
Sorry, Member Vogelon.
Thank you very much for that update. I hate to rewind the record, but I'm only familiar with the situation over in Auburn, which again is very similar, except Auburn provides its own buses. And one of the problems there is that when they're short a bus driver, they can't go to maintenance, for example, to pull a driver because of the contract with the bus drivers union. So my question to you, do we have any people in maintenance or central office that have that commercial license that can drive a bus in case there's an emergency? Is that something that we can do, or large van or whatever we have?
Yeah, so we are a contract with Hudson Bus Lines. They've been a contract for a while. We renewed it in this past year with Hudson Bus Lines. And as so they order the equipment, they buy the equipment, and we pay a contracted fee for use per day for drivers and for drivers' aides, minivans, vans, all of those. In the event that there is a bus shortage, honestly, I call on their contract, which means telling them, wave your arms so we get some lights. Modern features. Which means that we do call on that contract. There are other terminals in the state of Maine. There's some in New Hampshire. And in previous years, they've actually sent us drivers from Connecticut. So I'm not afraid to call on that contract first and foremost and say, you're going to meet your obligations. But in the unlikely, but likely, if there was absolutely no one, they looked at me and like, you can do whatever you want with the contract. We don't have anything. The school committee through COVID relief funds was able to purchase some minivans. They are not used to substitute for the busing, but they are used in absolutely emergencies where an administrator with an authorized driver's record, which we do make sure that they are able to drive those vehicles, are able to go and pick up a child. It is not the plan, though. We do rely on if Hudson can do a double run, we hold them accountable for that.
Has that happened at all this year?
We have had a couple uses of those minivans. Most of the cases have been a student that has missed their bus stop, or for whatever reason, they were in the school somewhere and they missed their bus. But for the most part, though, we have not substituted any of those vans for a full-size bus, minibus, or other vehicle. And that involves lots of communication between administration of the buildings and the parents as well.
If I can add, we use the vans quite a lot around different situations at school. Students need to be run home or be picked up for different reasons. Also, I would say Hudson as a partner, when we had the recent tragedy with the fires, was very helpful and very supportive, both on the weekend of helping move people from the gym emergency center shelter to other locations, but also Dawn and her team for helping to facilitate going everywhere we needed to get kids to and from school, including using those vans on a daily basis. So it's really an all hands on deck, and it's not. One of the things I said to Alyssa and Dawn today when we were reviewing for tonight was, I want to make sure this conversation is not about pointing fingers. We've done some things to create efficiencies. Connors, for example, last year had double bus runs every single day, which led to complications for teachers who needed to leave to pick up their kids from daycare, and it was pushing late hours. They've dissolved those, and so we've fixed that issue. We'd like to avoid double busing whenever we can, because teachers, as you know, have a contract, and when that contract is up, they need to be able to leave. But our teachers are committed to our kids, and they're not going to just leave if they have classroom students waiting for their bus to come. So it's an all hands approach and not about pointing fingers. I will say that Karen and I attended a meeting today in which one of the major conversations with the Commissioner of Education was transportation. And similar to what Massachusetts is doing, there have been conversations about what other resources does the state have, whether it's some level of mitigation of requirements and or other things. I know, for example, in Massachusetts, they're using the National Guard to drive buses. And so I don't know that we're there yet in the state of Maine, but I can tell you there was a screen full of superintendents this morning in our meeting saying they also need help with transportation. So we're hopeful that.
We also utilize other resources. So although we have a contract with Hudson Bus Lines, when things get tight, and we did this last year, we do look to outsource if they cannot meet their contractual obligations. We need to get those kids moved. And so whether it's an IEP or if they're homeless, whatever the occasion, we're going to do most anything to make sure that they get from point A to point B. So we do reach out to other competitors in the event also that they can't, but I'm very much aware of what Massachusetts did with the National Guard. And I'm not surprised that Maine is having this conversation because it is not limited to Lewiston.
Member Potvin?
A couple questions. One, what's our breakdown in terms of the number of students that are being bused right now? What's the need of the 5,500? And out of that 5,500, how many are at the high school?
So from what we do a participation survey, it's usually held in early October, early to mid-October, and we do one in the spring. So last year's participation survey isn't going to give us the numbers we need for this year. What we know from previous years, we bus between 2,500 and 3,000 of our students. As far as the high school, as in Power School, that's one of the schools. We actually, the buses line up, we have the route. And as far as the exact number, I'm trying to think if Dawn can get us even close out of those roughly 14 to 1,500 students. She's going to do some quick math. I'm going to watch her. And we'll see how quick she can get. But to argue, I would say that a lot of our outlying kids, there is a point where a child or a student gets their car license, and then we see that go. But then their car breaks down in the winter or in a weird time, and so they're back on the bus. So you do see that happen in the high school age group where they're kind of on and off. We do bus to our downtown locations and way, way out in our community. So one of the things that Dawn looked at, and we're going to see how close she can get and how fast, is she definitely took and combined some middle school and high school runs this year because she realized that the middle school went by the house and then the high school bus went by the house. So she took that route and said, one bus go by the house once so the middle school and high school kids could go. So we're looking for those efficiencies. We'll see how quick she can be.
Well, I have a question for Jake in the meanwhile. Jake, I mean, COVID's changed a lot in life. A lot of jobs have changed. People have stepped away, not doing it. I think the pool is starting to shrink. I don't think this is going to get better anytime soon. And I think maybe it's time we bring it for discussion before the whole committee to review the transportation policy as a whole, to look at what other alternatives we might be looking at before we have to get there on an emergency type basis. I'd rather do some planning now to address what kind of buffers we could develop for them to make it easier for their job. I don't see this improving. Hospitality is not improving. Public service is not improving. We have 160 openings at the school department. That's not improving. So, I think people are making a decision here, and we have to kind of morph to address that. And I'd rather address it now than wait for, the collapse to happen if drivers disappear. So if we could.
I do an answer real quick. It was roughly 1,325.
1325. So that would be roughly 50% of the busing goes to
Is
the
that
high
middle school
school.
and high school? Middle and high school, and there's 12 buses roughly that go to the high school and 12 roughly that go to the middle school on any given day. About
Okay,
half our fleet, it's split. Yeah.
okay, thank you. One item I want to mention. Talking this week to the public, everyone kind of understands what's happening out there. Everyone's trying to bounce around, do what they can, to make it work. They understand, where there are areas of less employment than others, and the busing situation is getting there. Their concern is that they don't want to have to hear that kids are getting penalized as being marked absentee in this situation. Can we address that so that if there's some formula that if there is bus running late and the kids are there, that they're not going through this absentee procedure, and the parents get involved and they're aggravated. And to me, there's a level of aggravation that's happening that need not happen. And I just wonder if we can address that.
Yeah, so I dug into that a little bit last week when I got a message about it. I would encourage parents, if your student's being marked absent because of a bus-related issue, please contact the school. We try to avoid that. But if it's a bus-related issue, it can absolutely be corrected on the school's end. We do not mark kids absent for being late on a bus or school transportation. I have seen other scenarios play out, though, where a bus is running late and a parent wants to drop off their student at the same time as the bus, and then want an exception for that student, even though they were in fact late. And so there's a balance there. But I've held attendance many times as a principal, and I know that our principals currently have the ability to do that and have attendance entered at a later time. But also parents should know that can absolutely be corrected. If a student is on a bus that's running late, that we can correct that. And if it keeps happening, we'll have other conversations around making sure it's not happening. But parents should not get that call that their student was absent for the day if it was a bus that was late.
And just for clarification to the public, who exactly should they contact? Who's the person that can change or address that absentee marking?
I'd start with the principal or the administration of the school.
Member Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of comments, then some feedback. First, thank you, Ms. Roman. It's a difficult enough job doing the nutrition, and you do that wonderfully, and to do transportation as well. Our district is very lucky to have you, as well as Ms. Rancourt. Great, awesome people that we have here, and so I wanted to point that out. We're very fortunate to have you guys. I guess feedback to this is, I mean, it's tough in a normal school year, and especially with everything going on now, it's a lot tougher. And so I know a lot of times school staff are kind of just asked to figure things out. And so I would hope that we would kind of take the philosophy of, if we have to shut down school or have to take any request, I'd rather do that than put extra stress on our school staff. School's not a daycare, it's just not. And so parents are responsible for their kids. And so if you got to shut down school, that's not our responsibility. To watch kids. And so I'm okay with anything that was suggested on this list here. I mean, I volunteered with the walking bus for a school year. I'm in the afternoon a few years back at Farwell, so I love the program. I think more schools should use it. So maybe this could be a good opportunity for us to try that out. I mean, I kind of hesitate about, increasing the walking area from 1.25 miles to 2 miles, particularly in some areas of town that aren't as walkable as others. But I mean, I get it. High school, middle school, probably old enough to do that. Literally all the requesting that parents drop off students. If we can't do busing, we can't do busing. Parents are responsible for their kids. They have to get them to school. Again, I think busing is a privilege that we'd give out, but I know legally it may be considered a right, but it's not my philosophy. Everything else on the list, altering dismissal times, as long as it doesn't affect the learning too much, again, totally okay with. Completely trust you there. And then suspending any busing that's needed. I know there was a lot of conversation about adding the busing for Connors students, because initially it wasn't in the plan. And I wouldn't say that I'm there that we should take away that busing, but if we have to prioritize buses on the list, I mean, it is something that we might have to consider. Although I truly hope we wouldn't get there, but I felt that was important to bring up too. So the gist of what I'm saying is, first, thank you. And then also I'm supportive of what you're proposing. And just as a member of the community, I fully support whatever action you want to take.
I just want to say to your point, so I did share 5 different items in the memo to the school committee and shared in the packet publicly, was to potentially expand the walking area for high school and middle school age students, walking school buses, a number of these things Member Jensen referred to, requesting parents support their students more frequently if they're able to, alter dismissal times. And part of the thinking with that is just, if we have to double up a bus, we can't ask a school to stay until 5:30 to run students. We may have to look at a slight alteration there. And then in extreme circumstances, we may have to suspend busing for some routes. And my thinking behind that, just to say it out loud for everyone to hear, is that school would still occur, but we may have to say this run isn't going to happen, or it's going to happen, but it's going to happen much later. And if you're there, we'll pick you up. And if not, I understand. And I just want the public to know that we don't want to close schools over this unless it's a really dire circumstance. But there may be a day where we have to message out using our system that bus blank will not be running today until an hour after its scheduled time, because it's being used to run a different run, and then somebody else is going to make that same run. So I don't think we're there yet, and I'm not trying to ring any bells. I just want to make sure people know that we are thinking about it, we are planning ahead, and we are prepared to do everything we can do to stay in session. But there may be situations in which we either can't provide transportation, or if it gets really dire, we may have to look at a different option. So that's what we want to make sure you're aware of up front.
Ms. Hawkins?
Just want to say really quickly, as a former school bus driver in a very, very much smaller district, we had 12 buses. I can't imagine what you two go through trying to wrangle 25. Having been a school bus driver, the job has changed a lot in the last 5 to 10 years. especially over the last 5. I can't go back. I will not survive it. But to anybody out there who thinks that, oh, it's within walking distance, depends on how long your legs are and how early you want to leave the house in the morning. I was lucky. My run was 40 miles round trip, morning and night. And that was a very rural district. I have some questions for our public buses here in Lewiston about why we're not using them for especially our middle school and high school students. We've talked about this before, Jake. Elementary kids running loose on a street, well, not necessarily loose, but running down a sidewalk to go to school, as a mom, scares me a bit, because no matter how many adults you have out there stay on the sidewalk, there's going to be that one kid. And I know, especially in the downtown, people do not pay attention to how fast they're driving. So I hope that we're going to have some good conversations about this. To the gentle ladies who are in here helping us with this issue tonight, thank you so much, and hang in there, because I don't envy you, but I applaud your efforts. But this is definitely something we're going to need to keep our eyes on.
Thank you. Member Bowden?
Just real quick for reference for anyone that's watching that is potentially sitting at home going, oh, I wonder if I should become a bus driver. What is the process for that? Where does it begin? Is there an age restriction? Is it something Hudson can just train them to do?
Yes. So
Okay.
for anyone that is interested in this lucrative field of bus driving, which I think is a fabulous way, it's really good hours. So most of the bus drivers are doing roughly 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. And they have the opportunity, as there's sporting events, or Hudson even does chartered events. So if they want to grow it into more of a career, that's definitely available. So Hudson Bus Lines, they so want bus drivers that they are willing, there's a $1,500 sign-on incentive. There's also free training. And when I say free training, the other day I was looking at the GPS software and it looked like they took that bus for a little ride down to Augusta and did some turnarounds, and maybe they stopped at Five Guys. I don't know, but they did training with those drivers, backing up, parking, the whole bit. And I see once in a while, if you are on the Hudson, they do have a Facebook page. They'll post those drivers with the new CDL license. So they will do all of that. There's a CDL clearinghouse that they will send in. So they do all of that work. So for somebody that's like, I don't want to spend money to do this training, it is free training. They will train you. And the whole process can take 6 to 8 weeks for them to become certified. But we have people that this is their lifelong profession. Like they maybe left another career and now they're doing this and they find joy in it daily because those kids have so much energy. And it's really fun to be with them. So we do have that. And we also have people that are aides, because maybe the CDL piece isn't for them, but they want to help on a bus. So finding an aide or a van driver. So vans don't require the CDL, but maybe you want to help us transport some special education kids or some other kids that just need a ride in a van. So they're really for all drivers. It's out there. Yes, you need a valid driver's license for this activity, but it's definitely one that I would encourage. And I'm like, if I wasn't so busy with nutrition and transportation, it's something that I would even look at and consider and be like, what else can we do for more of our people? So it is definitely a profession that I would say anyone listening that's like, hey, maybe I should try it. The Hudson numbers on our webpage, I believe it's on the internet. It's everywhere. So feel free to call.
So there is no, other than a licensed driver with a good record, there's no like age limit as far as, you know, if someone in our high school, someone, a senior decided that, oh, maybe this is a route that,
I believe you have to have a valid license and go through the state of Maine licensing, which I think is 21.
21.
So if you are 21 and you're still in our high school, then we can certainly have that discussion. But we at least have to get past that period of licensing in which you're under more scrutiny that does go up to age 21.
Okay, thank you.
Member Damon?
Yeah, I know it's going back many years back when I was in high school, but in Auburn, there was never any transportation provided for the high school, ever. And even when my own kids were here in Lewiston, we used to utilize the city buses. I mean, you could get a bus pass, and it would seem to me that maybe working collaboratively with the CityLink, maybe we could pick off some of those more local areas where the bus goes by anyway with bus passes to help relieve some of it. And we have done it in the past. And I get it that, it's tough with the smaller kids. I don't want to see elementary kids jumping on the city bus without knowing who's there. High school kids, I'm not so much worried about. I think they're more able to recognize if there's a problem and deal with it. But I would think that that's another whole system that already exists, public transportation. Most big cities, that's how a lot of kids get to high school. In fact, a lot of kids just get to high school on the city bus anyway in many cities. So I would think that that's another whole resource that we may not be utilizing as effectively as we could. We used to. I don't know how exactly when it went away, but it seems to me that that's something we could look into. And I know Don probably and Alyssa probably have. Do you work with CityLink at all? Or?
So this has come up at least twice. So I did reach out to AvCog, who are the holders of CityLink. So it's over in Auburn. I reached out to them about probably a little before COVID started. And I said, hey, how can we get a bus stop right at the high school? Because the closest one is down on East Ave by Shaw's right there. So we have, not only do we want that bus stop for our kids, but also parent engagement. So like after hours, how do we get parents here to participate with conferences, all that good stuff? So at the time, they told me they were reevaluating all their routes in the city. So I said, okay, so what else can we do in the meantime? And then we came up with the logistical problem that this campus, what time could we have that bus come through and not have 24 buses and all the parents and the Green Ladle and LRTC? So it is something I want to dig deeper in now that we're past the bulk of COVID, and now that they have more direct routes, it's something that I think would be something to dig back into and see if there's any way we can shimmy some stops closer to our facilities. So it's definitely something that is near and dear to me because I know other places in Maine even rely on some of that city transport. My only concern, and this is just coming from that safety and security measure, is the age of the kids and who's riding the buses. So that would obviously have to be considered as we're going through. And then obviously the financial aspect of that with the organization. But yes, I have kept that kind of in my reserves as well as what can we do there. Thank you.
Just to add, I started reaching out to people as well. And as of last Tuesday, Jen Williams from the Transportation Department said that the CityLink service right now has such a shortage that they've reduced some of their runs themselves.
I would like to say that, learning to work with the bus schedules seems like a simple thing. But when my daughter-in-law or former daughter-in-law was trying to get back and forth to work at Bates College, she had never been on the buses, was afraid to get on the bus by herself, didn't know how they worked, looked at the schedule and saw numbers and just completely shut down. It's a life skill that doesn't just apply here. I've been on trips to DC and knowing how to look at a train schedule and know, oh, they're coming at this time. That's a life skill that's going to suit any place you go that has public transportation. I know it's in the works and there's some kinks to work out, but I think it's something that would be beneficial in the long run for any student. So please work on the kinks. We'd really like to see this happen.
Any other discussion? I think we're good. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 8, to receive a presentation on gender identity and awareness.
So I've asked Aisha Hall to join us. She'll come up to the podium, but we're in a time where conversations around gender identity and gender awareness have shifted to what I think is something that's more prevalent than it once was. Aisha and I have had this conversation a number of times, and some pretty big questions have come up around gender and identity and awareness. And I had a conversation earlier, or say late summer, early fall, with a member of the board, and we were talking about this, and I'm going to own that I'm on a bit of a journey myself with understanding everything. And one of the questions that came up was, what age is it appropriate to start talking to kids about gender awareness and or gender identity? And so we've been looking into that more. And I think the real answer is, okay. Oh, hey, thanks.
You're welcome.
Oh, I got some. And so the real answer is, as you dig into it a little further, at least I had to for my own, again, just, 1 second, sorry. For my own reference, started to look into this further and got into some different resources and trying to better understand. But we're having so many conversations about equity and students being able to access school without being looked down upon, without being othered, without feeling different, making sure that there's a warm, supportive environment for learning. And that takes learning of our own. And so I wanted to cross this bridge here and say publicly, and also to whoever may be watching or watch a recording later, that a lack of awareness has caused some students and staff to hide or feel shamed about what their identity is. And so I think it's upon us at this point in time to better understand how individuals identify. And I thought this would be a great platform, an opportunity to just have a discussion. And so Aisha has shared some resources, one of which being the gingerbread person, which as we go through this, I actually want to put up on the screen, and I have it before you so you can see some different components to this. 1 second, I just want to put it up so others can see. If it'll go. And I say this in the most genuine of ways. There's some definitions at the bottom here that we'll get to. I don't know the right age to have these kinds of conversations, but I know when I was at the middle school as a principal, we had kids coming into school who were absolutely exploring their identity, and that wasn't the first day they were doing it. But they need to be supported and should be treated fairly and equally. And so things like this can give us a visual, at least to get a conversation going, with identity being connected to the brain, attraction being connected to the heart, expression being the whole, and obviously sex and conversations around anatomical and other things. I'm scrolling so you can see it here at home. But these conversations around gender identity, expression, and anatomical sex, and what our kids are living, also what our staff are living, and the ways in which we need to grow so that we can better support everyone around us and make sure that we aren't doing something to limit their experience in the educational environment or in the workplace. If you want to.
Dawn, I was so silent. So, hello, it's always good to stop by and see you all. I was a little nervous about this topic. I'm gonna be vulnerable at the mic, right? Because this is our community and we're trying to expand our community. And as the SEL and Equity Resource Coordinator, I wanna make sure that I'm resourcing everyone in a way that makes sense and in a way that's appropriate for where we are on our collective journey. I was saying today that a lot of us may feel like individually you're far, but if one of us is struggling, the rest of us are struggling, because that's what it means to be a part of a community. And I did give you some handouts. First of all, talking about gender identity and gender expansive student rights is not going to be done in 15 minutes. And so we're hoping that all of the resources that I've given to the school committee and that we've been talking about with our administrators, we're at right now on our journey of professional learning, all the things that we have resourced our administrators with, it will get to our community. as soon as we can make sure that it's appropriate to do so, being that we're set up, that if there are questions, we know you will know where to go. And if you need other resources or if you have ways that you want to expand your understanding, we're not just leaving you out there hanging. And so with that said, with the 15 minutes that we have, I don't want to leave anyone hanging with the information as well. So I just want to say that we are honoring diverse identities within our multicultural school community. And at the moment, you've heard me talk a lot about race identity, which we are talking about in our district right now. Just to recap on our CASEL, which is the Collaborative of Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. We're using CASEL competencies of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship building, healthy relationship building, and responsible decision-making to guide our path. And we are aligning those competencies with social justice frameworks from don't get me hooked up. Social justice frameworks from Learning for Justice. They have changed their name since 2020, excuse the hesitation. And so we're aligning our competencies with those social justice frameworks. So not only are we expanding our capacity, not only are we building awareness for those who are just new to this journey, but we're giving ourselves some tools to take action. So the first thing I want to say is that we do need guidance for our LGBTQ plus community for several reasons. But for one thing, they are protected and they should be protected under federal rights. And so when we think about students who are identifying as LGBTQ plus in that community, we want to make sure that we know that that's a protected class and they deserve and should expect everything that every other student receives in the school building. And to keep going, we have some high school level data from the 2019 Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey. I thought it was really important to bring to this space some actual statistics about students in our state. And I'll read some of them out loud, although I expect you all to go and peruse when you get home, all the great information. But I'll start with the fact that 13.6% of Maine high school students identify as LGBTQ. So that's about 7,500 students. That's nearly 1 in 7 students. Sexual orientation, 12.4% of our students identify as either gay, lesbian, or bisexual. And as far as gender identity is concerned, 1.6 of our Maine high school students identify as transgender, and 1.6, there are 1.6 who are not sure. So right there, just knowing that there are students that identify and there's an identification that we need to be honoring. Because we're a community, it should make sense that we should make sure we're including everyone. But I want to go on to look at some of these statistics about why we should be supporting our LGBTQ plus students, because from the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey, LGBTQ students experience more violence and discrimination at school and at home and in the community. LGBTQ plus students face many challenges and fewer supports. Their mental health outcomes are significantly worse. And I'll just pull out one that I found to be a significant or surprised me. Was nearly half the LGBTQ students who have nearly half of LGBTQ students have long-term emotional or behavioral problems expected to last 6 months or more. So that's 45% for that population, and that's 15% in relation to 15% of the students who don't identify as such. LGBTQ students are less likely to have support from adults and more likely to experience violence. LGBTQ students are 3 times more likely to have been forced to have sexual contact in their lifetime, and LGBTQ students are twice as likely to have 4 or more adverse childhood experiences. Just going down, I wanted to make sure I gave you all a bunch of terms to know. We had Jake go over our gingerbread person. But I'm also within the presentation, I pulled out some that these are need to knows within our district and that we should be talking about. And I'll pull some of those out now. I'll start with heteronormative, the view or expectation that heterosexuality predicted on the gender binary is the default, preferred, or normal mode of sexual orientation. It assumes that sexual and marital relations are most fitting between people of opposite sex. The heteronormative view, therefore, involves alignment of biological, sexuality, gender identity, and gender roles. And I pull that out because I think it's important to put in this space that, yes, we are looking for developmentally appropriate ways to talk about gender expansive rights and talk about gender identity. One place you can start is with that gender heteronormativity and the thought of there only being a binary way of looking at ways of being. Being male and female, yes, those two exist, but there are other ways to be and identify. And one thing we could do, no matter what the age is to make sure that folks know that there are ways other than being a boy or a girl to identify and express. I know that came up with Jake, and I wanted to make sure that we do have some resources that we're going through with our admin and with our teachers and educators. However, it's going to take us some time to get through all of those pieces. But if we start there, knowing that the way that you think isn't the only way to be, I think that that's a good place for our community to start. We already talked about the genderbread person, but I wanted to go ahead and read three definitions. One is gender identity, and gender expression, just so we're clear. Gender is a social construct based on a group of emotional, behavioral, and cultural characteristics attached to a person's sex assigned at birth. Gender has several components, including gender identity, gender expression, and gender role. Gender identity is a person's internal sense of who they are in regard to gender, regardless of their sex assigned at birth. And gender expression is an individual's physical characteristics, behaviors, and presentation that intentionally or unintentionally serve as social markers of masculinity, femininity, and androgyny. Forms of gender expression include appearance, dress, mannerisms, speech patterns, and social interactions. And one final definition I want to bring to this space is heterosexism. This is a set of attitudes, biases, and discrimination that privileges heterosexuality and heterosexual relationships. It includes the assumption that everyone is heterosexual, or that heterosexual attractions and relationships are the norm and therefore superior. It is believed that everyone is or should be straight. And like I said, if we start with just that awareness that there's more than two ways to be, I think that that's something that we learn, that there are two ways to be very, very early. And so opening up our minds and our ways of thinking about heteronormativity will probably lead you to a conversation and to be informed and I guess empowered in any conversation about why you should be supporting our students who identify as LGBTQ+. And I think that's all, because we could go on for days. I'm sure you have questions, but in the, I guess, to make sure that we're not taking up too much time, because like I said, this can go on for days and days, and we do have at least a day and a half. I know I'll be talking about gender identity all month, because our administrators are charged to, if they felt that their educators at their building were ready, to have the same type of conversation or start this conversation where it hasn't been in our district before. So I think that's it. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Any members of the committee have any questions or comments? Member Bowden?
I guess what I'm wondering is, are you suggesting that we begin this conversation at an elementary level? Is that what you're like? Is that what the presentation is about?
So the presentation, why I came is because Jake asked me to make sure I can resource you all with this conversation.
Sure.
However, as we talk about discussing gender and sexuality in elementary school, like I said, there are ways to talk about gender expression without getting into the X's and O's and all the other letters that go with talking about sex education. Is that okay? I'm getting this off the fly. So I'm not suggesting anything. I know that our administrators and our central office staff, we're going through the moves of answering that question. What is developmentally appropriate? I'll probably email you and all of you afterward to introduce you to a 20-minute film about creating gender inclusive schools and classrooms. And it touches base on what is developmentally appropriate. And it was really helpful for me. And so I'll share that, and I'll be sharing that with our administrators and hopefully our teachers as the year goes on.
Thank you. Member Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great presentation.
Thanks.
I really like the idea that maybe teachers in between getting some planning time, hopefully can have some professional development over this. I think this is really cool. Fifth grade teacher myself, I'd be really hesitant to talk about any sexual subjects, of course, but I don't think that's necessarily the case here. Like I can think of last year when I was picking out books and we got a new supply and there's a book, I forget the name, some of you guys might be familiar with it, where it's essentially 26 couples, one for each letter of the alphabet. They're animals and they each have like a food by their name, like it'd be an aardvark and an antelope that are married together. And every single couple, they're all animals, of course, but it's all a male and then a female with a male and female name. So it's very, I think, heteronormative would be the phrase. And so as a teacher, I'm like, yeah, I'm pulling that from my library because I think if a student reads that and they don't necessarily fit under heteronormativity, that's going to not be a great book for them. And so just including other pieces of like read aloud books that I would read, making sure my class library has things in it that aren't, focused just on heteronormativity, I think help. And so I think providing any kind of PD for teachers is going to be pretty helpful. I know it can be some tough conversations to have with some like young kids, but I know like middle and high schoolers can, they understand this stuff and they're working on their identity. I mean, even at age 11, kids really start to, develop their identity. And I want kids to be comfortable at school, hopefully staying on topic, but I'm very happy with the new addition at the high school that we're having single use bathrooms. And so any student who felt unsafe going into a shared bathroom before is, hopefully going to have that problem resolved. And I fully trust that the high school is going to make any exception for any student that's going through an issue like that. I think we have a lot of opportunity in the district. So going forward, I'm very happy to see the direction this is taking.
Thanks. And I'll emphasize that we are focused on identity, self-awareness and self-management identity this month up until November. I can't be too specific about the dates, but we will be giving those resources to our admin so that they could be rotating that information into their professional learning communities. So already underway. Wish I had the little beautiful slide presentation that says how great we are about our, what did we call it? An intention roadmap, our equity intention roadmap. And so we do have some guide rails. And like I said, I was concerned about not having an answer for, well, what's an age appropriate time to start talking about sex? And that's not really what we're talking about. At least I hope that's how we understand it. It's about gender expression and identifying, talking about a family who has a mom and a mom. Just a personal note, my preschooler was a preschooler at the time, and her best friend had a mom and a mom. And I had to, at that moment, decide if I'm going to, one, say that my way is the right way, or am I going to figure out a way to talk about this with my preschooler, y'all? And so I think it's really important for us to have those guardrails and to have those common understandings about what we're talking about. We're not giving children, quote unquote, sex education as we would traditionally know it to be. That's not what we're asking. And that's not what I'm telling you to do. But we are talking about more than one way of identifying and more than one way of being. And I think that that's something that we should start as early as developmentally appropriate. And we are on our way to figuring that out with some confidence so that I can come up here the next time and show you all of the things that we've known and learned about our district and our students in this topic.
Thank you. And I think it's important to note also that it's an uncomfortable conversation to have with kids at a really young age. But it's important to be aware and acknowledge the fact that kids are having these conversations without adults. And so if they're having those conversations anyways, at least with adults in, they can kind of guide those conversations in an appropriate way, because whether you want to believe it or not, your third and fourth graders are having these conversations at recess with their peers. And so it's a difficult conversation to have with a young child. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are really anti having these conversations with kids, but the conversations are already occurring and we just need to provide the support so that they're occurring appropriately. Ms. Hawkins?
So I went through school in the 80s and I could have been a poster child for the term tomboy. I wore the jeans and the sneakers. I played football. I worked on cars. I was not your typical girl. I was really lucky there were enough tomboys in my school district that it wasn't unusual, but school became my safe place because at home I was not allowed to be me. I was supposed to wear those dresses and paint my fingernails and play with Barbies, and that just wasn't me. So home became a very dangerous place for me sometimes. And having a school system that was willing, well, we don't usually put girls in shop class, but if you really want it, give it a try. Some of the teachers weren't always on board, but it was still an opportunity to really be who I am. And I know it's uncomfortable for some people to see things differently than how they were raised, but sometimes just to be a decent human, you've got to take a step out of what's comfortable and see what's there. So I hope that people will take a look at the information that Aisha's given us and take your filters off a little bit and see that this is really just a way to include as many people as possible, however they choose to be included, not how we want them to be included.
Thank you. Mr. Potvin?
Well, this is a subject where I'm going to clearly part ways with my fellow committee members. I don't know what direction this is going to. I don't know if this is going into a curriculum-based situation to be taught to all students or what, but I can tell you this. In 1995, when cities in Massachusetts began to do the exact this, we had a ton of parents show up not happy. And those parents, whether embracing religious views, their own personal lifestyle views, the fact that that's their child and they're choosing to bring them up the way they want to bring up, they disagreed with your perspective. And as a leader of the particular group that advocated in the Massachusetts State House, we passed the parents' rights legislation, which banned this very thing, 8-1 in the Massachusetts legislature. The reason I bring this up is the same thing's going to happen in the state of Maine. You want to talk about this? It's highly inappropriate. Yeah, they talk about it when they're kids and stuff like that. This is about family, is about their beliefs, okay? And this is nothing more than the school departments attending to indoctrinate children. I will go that far because that's what it was in Mass, and it's going to be the same thing up here. And I don't think this is appropriate. I think that it's left to the families. If a child has gotten to that point, whatever point, that through family, through their beliefs, through their churches, whatever they're involved in, then yes, they need to be identified as they identify themselves. So I see a fine line here that yes, we need to educate and support those who make a decision that they're where they're at and that they're identified. But I don't see the purpose. I don't see the productivity in bringing in students in these classes to go through this, to start deciding, oh, well, which way, what's this, what's that? No, that's what the parents and their beliefs. A very hard line on this. That's where I stand. And I will support the parents that will show up in force once this gets out.
Can I address that and just make a clarifying statement that this is not for students? What we're giving right now is not for students. It's to equip you all and to equip our educators to make sure they understand what it means to be differently gendered or identify as someone who is not a male or a female or who expresses in that different way. And so as an educator, if you don't know what your students are experiencing outside of the classroom, how it's really difficult to speak or to protect or to care for or meet students where they are. And this one particular topic, I would hope that we all understand that we have to do something first before we bring it to our students in our community. I commend our superintendent for giving our educators an opportunity to have the conversation, but that's what we're doing right now, having the conversation. So I want to be clear that this is not in our, like, I'm not sure, y'all can talk because I don't do curriculum, but the talking about LGBTQ and what you do in your bedroom and what you do at home, that's not what we're talking about. We're educating folks on how people identify and that the traditional family is no longer a traditional family to many people. And so if we're part of a community, we need to understand that what we think is traditional may not be what's traditional in the community that you have now. And as we evolve, we're going to either be here divisive or we're going to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to talk about it as a community and how we're going to sit in it as a community. I'm also wanting to say that this is not a problem to be solved. This is something about educating us so that we can educate our students and meet them where they are, because we have to equip them for the community that they're going into after they leave us. So as an educator, I feel really strongly about us in this room and the educators that are my colleagues understanding and knowing what we're doing and what we're facing with supporting the students that we're talking about. Because again, I think it was 7,500 students. I don't think it's okay to say we see you, we don't know you, but we see you, but we don't see you. It's really confusing. And so until we have the conversation, until we start creating some common knowledge, a common understanding and talking about some common terms, it's going to be difficult to, again, have teachers, have parents come in and talk about what's what, and then not have anything to say. Right now, what I want to make clear is that I'm not sure what it is that you think we're teaching, but I would really like to know what it is that you're a hard stop on and what's banned. But if that's not a time for this, I'm okay with that.
I'll answer that. So Aisha, you're from Massachusetts, right?
No, sir, I'm from New York City, South Carolina. And
so you weren't there back then. Okay.
No, but I'm a New Yorker who, again, I mean, I don't know when you went to school, but I went to school. I think I graduated in '95.
Okay, so I'm maybe a few pages ahead of everybody else on this conversation, just because this is how it all started. All started with educating the educators. Then the educators set up all these things in the schools. Then we had 6 to 10-year-old kids coming into a auditorium being told to experiment because they don't know who they are. Okay, this is how it all started. And it started with a simple little discussion, just as you presented. Okay, and that's the point I'm trying to make, is that I don't know where this is going, but I have my assumptions, and it needs to be careful, or else, maybe it's time for a Parents' Rights Act in Maine. Maybe this needs to happen, but this is, yes, you can say it's to educate the educators. So be it. That's just step one. And then all of a sudden we're educating. This is a personal thing. Personal stuff needs to be left. We're not supposed to be educated about. We're supposed to be math, science. I get that you need to identify. I get you need to accept people, but the problem is this stuff crosses over lines that make a ton of families uncomfortable. Now I know a lot of it is about pushing the envelope to make people uncomfortable. The problem is those people will get together and make the laws that will change everything. So, I can't even, no, I can't, sorry.
Member Whitlow had her hand up, then Member Beauplant, and then Member Jensen.
I can appreciate your passion, Ron, but it's a good thing it's not 1995. I want to say thank you. I think this is really good information. I don't think the intent here at all is to be pushing sexuality on our students. I didn't hear that at all tonight. So I want to be very clear about that. It's the little stuff. If we're aware of our students, of our teachers, of our coworkers, everyone around us who is not like us and accepting of the normalcy of people not being like ourselves. That's what this conversation is about. And I have to say that Jake has been a great presence for this district. When he was a principal, I went to him and said, I have heard some concerns around graduation and the students wearing different colored gowns, the blue and the white, because females that didn't identify in that way with other females, I guess I probably said that all wrong, but they didn't feel comfortable wearing the white. And so what did Jake do? Well, he changed that, and I have to applaud him for that, because it's those little things that if we're aware of how other people are feeling and who they are, then we're just better as a whole. And I have to say that, when you have high school students, okay, middle school students, and they think they're better than everybody else. If I can say this, got 3 boys, and they're always like judging everybody. Oh, they're so weird. And I'm like, those are really great times to have those conversations with our kids, to say, why are they weird? Because they're not like you. What makes you so much better than them? And these are conversations that my husband and I have with our kids all the time. And I think that everybody needs to open up their minds a little bit and say, why are we so right to be heterosexual? So I appreciate where you're going, Ron, and your stance there. But I think it's about opening up our minds and being accepting of others, because we are not any more right than anybody else.
Thank you. Member Beauplant.
Very eloquent, Ms. Whitlaw. That was fantastic. And to my good friend Ron here, who has visited more classrooms and put more time in this position than I have in my short time, and probably anyone here, I would just suggest the next time you go to a school, go to the meeting of the and I always screw up the acronym, excuse me, LGBTQ group, and listen to the stories of kids that have been rejected by parents and peers and out on the streets. See the cuttings on their arms out of the frustration that they are not being accepted. Listen to the tales of bullying that they've had to go through. And at some point, to me at least, it seems political correctness needs to be thrown out the window for the greater good of understanding. And I'm look forward to, and I hope you'll still be with us on the council when we discuss the critical race theory too, but we'll save that for another day, another time. I love that we can agree to disagree and shake hands afterwards, but I'm sounding like a former counselor, a committeeman now, and that may be not the best thing, but it comes from the heart. So talk to them, see them, listen to them, hear their stories, experiences. It'll tear you apart. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honestly, I couldn't really say it any better than Member Whitlow did. It's very eloquent. I think as a goal, the district should be that nobody should have to identify. If we have a system where, if you have to identify to get the treatment that you need, that you deserve, then I think it's a problem with the system itself. And I think a better system is that one where you don't have to identify as anything as. It shouldn't really matter what your beliefs are in that kind of deal, unless you want to talk about them. And so, I don't think anybody should ever have to identify. I think that's kind of the problem right there. It's not 1995. Thank God, I think the national opinion polls weren't even in favor of gay marriage until it was fully legalized by the Supreme Court. And now it's like, what, 90%? So it's been a lot of change in the last 10 years. And so I think a lot of the work you're doing is like 10 years ahead of your time. And I think we'll look back on this and realize we should have done this a lot sooner. Some parents might get mad. I'd say let them get mad if they have to. I think the work we're doing is very well. I can tell you as a 30-year-old now growing up, a lot of guys deal with mental health issues because they think you have to be manly all the time. It's awful. It really is just a huge pressure. And so like a lot of guys will actually, take their own lives and go to a lot of through issues because of that kind of stuff. And so just knowing as a guy that, yeah, it's okay to like sports and all this stuff. Like tonight, I'm going to go home and scream at the Cowboys game, but I'm probably going to blast some Celine Dion on my car on the way back there. And I'm going to sing very loudly. And so 16-year-old me never would have, I can't do that. It's not allowed. It doesn't fit. My identity has to be this. And so growing up and maturing, you're realizing just how wrong it is. And so our kids will believe that kind of stuff unless we teach them otherwise. And they're having these conversations at age 10 and before, unfortunately. So I get, again, sticking away from some of the touchier subjects, but just identity and the way you express yourself and who you're attracted to, I think that's definitely some room to work on. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. Yes, Jake.
So I have three things that I want to share, and I'll stop at that for now. But I think that all bias is rooted in fear. And when someone's presenting something as their identity, their expression, and I don't understand it, I'm more likely to fear it because I don't understand it. And I'm more likely to treat that person differently. That's wrong. I believe that to be wrong. So I think we have to educate ourselves on the identities that people are living so that we can treat them well. And I think some of the terminology is hard. This is not my first time seeing some of this terminology, but I can tell you that the first time I did, which was, I don't know, probably about 20 years ago, it made me think a lot. It caught me off guard. It made me pretty uncomfortable. I remember talking to a family member who is very religious, who expressed to me that some of the things that I was reading about was a violation of religion. And that prompted me to try to figure out where. And I couldn't find it. And I'm not trying to create a war, excuse me, but I couldn't find places in religion where identity and expression were seen as something that shouldn't be done or talked about. That's one thing. My second thing is that the kids will kind of give us a litmus test that we really need sometimes. And so even prior to bringing this conversation up in this platform or for public to consume, I talked to some kids and they all but laughed at me because I was really nervous about bringing this forward as a conversation because I don't want to create turmoil, but for that kid who's living it, it's not fair to them. So maybe we should bring it. And the kids I spoke to were in high school. And I know we're not talking about this as curriculum, but they laughed at me because they've been living this. They have friends that identify and express in so many different ways than I grew up with. And they're like, it's not a big deal. It's not like it changes who I am because someone is who they are. And that rang a bell for me that it's not like when we talk about things like indoctrinating or things of that nature, talking about expression and identity and acceptance around that doesn't mean you're creating it. So I think it's important to know, so that's my second point, is that the kids are not in a place where they feel disadvantaged or that this is an awe-inspiring conversation. But the third thing is we talk about professional learning and making sure people who are working with our students have all the information that they can have to best educate our kids. And for any one kid sitting in any one class who feels like I can't learn in this environment because this is not part of the conversation or not on the table as part of the skill set that the teacher has, then we've missed that kid. And as educators, I think we need to do our best to be educated and prepared with it and to know all of these stereotypes. Because if you look at that gray area on this gender-bred person, it talks about identity does not equal expression, does not equal sex, does not gender, and does not equal sexual orientation. And I think those are really key components. And that's part of the reason why I brought this particular piece, because there's all kinds of pieces out there, was that I had bias and started to look at things as what I saw presented to me triggered all kinds of bias from what I was raised with and what it must have meant. And I was wrong. And I think we can get better. So the goal wasn't to bring this as a curriculum. The goal was to bring this as equity and to be reflective of bias and the things that we don't yet understand because we've never explored them.
And just one more thing, then I'm out. I just want to make sure that we understand that it's not personal. Kids are being bullied. Kids are being made fun of. Kids are dying and killing themselves because they feel that they aren't accepted. And so if we're telling them that they're not accepted, we're missing the mark. And if we're not able to open our minds and open our hearts about what's different now, we may be missing the mark for ourselves, and we may be missing out on some great students. I'll say that in the 2 years that I've been here, just having an equity conversation about identity, I've had at least 2 students come out to me. And as much as I want to say it's not my personal opinion, it's not about opinion. It's not about our opinion. We're educators. My personal opinion is to stand with those students and to make sure we're holding this space so that we can work all of our differences out, so we can work out all of our unknown fears and unknown biases that we may not be okay with. I have my own biases as well. But again, that cisgendered heteronormative way of being, I understand that I have to unlearn some stuff. I have daughters and a son. I have responsibility to make sure that they're open and their hearts are open. And so when I talk about this, again, I just want to emphasize it's not personal. It's not just happening behind closed doors. Students are scared, and students are coming to school not feeling welcome, not feeling safe. And you can't learn like that. Culturally responsive teaching, you can't learn like that. You have to make sure you're responding to who's in the classroom, and we can't leave anybody out. So I hope that we can continue this conversation. I've really enjoyed this. It's going to get dicier, but I appreciate it. Lewiston Public Schools is winning right now. And I thank you, Jake, for giving me the opportunity. So
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to say just one more thing, and I hope I say this right. And then we'll go, there's a hand raised online. Sort of in following up on what Member Potvin was saying. Teachers are not, as a result of this conversation that we had tonight, teachers are not going to walk into a classroom and just start teaching this to students, but they're going to have an awareness, a level of awareness that they might not have already had, so that if a student brings it up, the teacher knows how to interact with that student appropriately. And at the same time, when that conversation starts, a student who identifies as heterosexual and has been raised by their parents, that you have a mom and a dad and the normal typical structure, is not going to overhear that conversation and suddenly decide that they're gay or transgender. That, like, we're not going to be teaching kids to change their gender. But what's going to happen is when the teachers are ready to have those conversations that a student might initiate, the student who doesn't feel comfortable speaking up is going to hear that, and they're going to find comfort, and they're going to know that they have a support system, rather than holding it all in and potentially committing suicide at some point, because the suicide rates among this group of students is extremely high. And so I guess my point is, we're not going to teach kids to change their gender, but the kids that are already questioning it will have an outlet to go to talk about it when they need to. And I don't think you or anyone else who's opposed to this conversation or who's scared by this conversation wants any student to feel left out. And this is just going to give them the opportunity to feel like they fit in too, and that they have supports that they might not have known were there. And then we have a member online.
Hi, my name is Kira Sormento, actually. I apologize that the name is different. I'm using my partner's iPad. I just wanted to say, I heard Member Bowden ask, is this going as low as elementary school? And I would like to share that I know of children within our district as young as first grade who are maybe not fitting into what we would expect as the heteronormative gender norm. There are students in our district at the elementary level who are identifying as something other than the sex that was assigned at birth for their gender identity. And there are educators who are not able to respond appropriately to that. And as I very much appreciated was said, the mental health and mental illness and suicide rates for this population are extensive. So I really worry for students who are coming up through our schools, even at the elementary level, who are maybe not being addressed in the best possible way. And the long-term effect that that may have on them. So I did want to share for you all that even at the elementary level, these aren't just conversations that are happening out on the playground. These are our children who are walking into our school saying, I express myself this way, I identify this way at the elementary level. And when other students are not made aware of this, I have witnessed students being misnamed and misgendered. No, so-and-so is this name. No, that they're a girl, they're a boy, and the damage that must cause to that child because the other students in the classroom have never learned how to respect or address that person appropriately. So I think that rather than teaching, that about these different things, but just simply teaching them how to understand and accept and support individuals who might be different than them is absolutely the right direction. And it is a critical direction. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. There was another hand raised, but it's gone. Oh, no, it's back. Jamie, can you hear us?
Hi, Megan.
Hi, go ahead. You can go ahead and speak.
So I'm really confused right now. Is this being brought to the attention of everybody because we want to support that movement or because we're going to teach about that movement? Where are we at?
This is, as Ms. Hall explained, this is to educate teachers and school staff so that they know how to have these conversations appropriately when they come up. No, they're not, this is not, do you want to elaborate, Aisha? Thank you.
We're at the support phase right now, Miss Jamie. Thank you.
Thank you. So my next one is, what about for the kids that do not support, well, I'm not saying they don't support it, but that can't relate to the LGBTQ movement, but that are just of boys and girls, I guess you want to say. So is there going to be support set up for that group of people saying that they're normal, but this is also normal and we're all going to work together on this? Or is it just this movement and everybody else gets shunned out?
So normally, as you know, we don't engage in back and forth questions and answers. If Ms. Hall is interested in just clarifying how this supports all students, we could do that, or.
Okay, I was misunderstood, I thought, because she spoke. So does she want to answer that or not?
Yeah, that was my fault. So it's hard for me, and I know now why they tell me not to speak, because I cannot speak for our whole department, but I will say, I'll emphasize that this is about supporting and just a personal, knowing that those teachers and those students are speaking about inclusion and identity, all of the identities, just like every other identity that we know that's protected. They all belong and they're all included. And like I said, when you're in a situation where a student is saying, this is how I express, I too was new to that situation when it did happen to me. And I wanted to be supportive. It shook me up. I'm glad that I handled it the way that I did, but it brought an awareness to mind that if I was uncomfortable as the equity resource coordinator, we should probably be having this conversation with my colleagues so that they're not in the same space and unintentionally harming students who are expressing in the ways that they express. I hope that answered, but if not, A Hall at Lewiston Public
It does
School.
and it don't. So what's the harming that you speak of?
Yes. So Aisha just said her email address is ahall, HALL, at Lewiston Public Schools. If you want to email her and ask a lot more of these questions, she'd be happy to go more in depth with you at that time.
Perfect. Can I also just throw one more note in?
Sure.
This is more of a comment. Mr. Potvin, beautiful, spoke. I agree 100%. And thank you, Aisha. I'll be looking for your email.
Oh, thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments by board members? Nope. Okay. Thank you, Aisha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 9, to receive and approve the pursuit of an asynchronous learning model. And that's a really hard word for me to pronounce.
So I wanted to look at ways in which we can continue to help our students. Reflecting on the impacts of COVID and the things that have caused some disruption, this board supported in the budget cycle to use ESSERF dollars to provide ELMS at the middle school level because it had found some success. And we were unable to hire for those positions, and the year has started and things are moving along. But we still had those positions, or still have those positions in that budget. And I wanted to just share an idea with you. And we would have to go through some design work. So this would be a process. This wouldn't be something we start tomorrow. But to go into some design work with the committee support to look at an asynchronous learning model, which would be probably have an application process. So there's some kind of screening to it to make sure we have the right applicants. But we're thinking of something that's more about credit recovery, students who kind of just slipped last year because that was just not for them. And how do we support them? And the whole idea behind asynchronous is it's not from 8 to 2 when the bells ring at the high school level, but looking at other ways that students can recover credits that are even more expansive than what already exists. And the high school does a good job with different opportunities. We also have students who return to our community from being away for various reasons. And the idea of walking into a school to attend school to try to get some rhythm to potentially get back to school full time is not in their wheelhouse. We hear about these kids, they often fall through the cracks. And so between COVID and a select group of students, I think with your approval, I'd like to start a design process. And once that's up and running, once we have a design, to make an attempt at running this asynchronous model. And I just wanted to share a memo with you and also answer any questions that you may have about what I'm thinking.
Member Jensen.
No questions at the time. I'm just very excited about the idea and the possibilities that could come from it. I love the idea of hitting, credit recovery, especially with everything going on right now and how much time's been lost. So I'm fully supportive of the idea and anything we can do to support.
Thank you. Any other comments? No? All right.
I don't know if this requires a motion or if you just kind of knowing that you're fine with it, I'll pursue it. So without seeing any concerns, then we'll continue to pursue it. And we have a lot of items in place, like I mentioned, because of the efforts we're already making, but this is a shift and I wanted you to be aware.
The agenda does ask for approval. Do we need to vote on it just as a technicality since it's on the agenda, or no?
I'm okay with the direction I feel the committee is given.
Okay, perfect. Agenda item number 10, to receive and approve the recommendations regarding holidays on the school calendar.
So back to me again. We last spring adopted a school calendar that included Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. Those were two holidays that as a community, we had not recognized at the school level as a paid holiday in the past. And so when I think of things like, does that have a fiscal impact? Yes, it does, because it's a paid holiday. When I think of things like how much of our community is practicing that faith and celebrating on that day, trying to gather that information, but as a school system, we don't keep that kind of record. What denomination of faith do you celebrate? So I don't have a statistic for you. So what I did is I pushed out some surveys to ask questions around that. And there was a lot of feedback, but just to share with you the numbers I had before we started this. From the community-based survey, there was 151 responses, and 76.2% of people said, no, don't keep these as a paid holiday for Lewiston Public Schools. There were a lot of comments about being very supportive of people having the day, if they practice that faith, taking that day from work. Students should be marked as religious celebration, things of that nature. But from a continuity and a perspective of really just continuity and not having things be disrupted, especially early in the school year, there was concerns from the community about that. So that was community that was heavily in favor of going back to a prior calendar. From the staff survey, there was 492 responses, and 45.4% said no. And so that was pretty close to a split. 54% said yes, keep it. Again, a lot of comments about continuity and really being mindful and respectful of those who do celebrate this faith so that they would still have the time off, which as a school system, we already do. So if a student takes that day as a religious celebration, that's without penalty. That's written into policy as it exists. But also staff can take that day also. And then students, there were 108 responses. And of the 108, it was 14.8% that said no. And then there were a lot of comments about, I think the students maybe didn't read the initial part of the survey, and that's my assumption. But there were a lot of questions in the comments about, as long as we don't have to make these days up. Well, I can appreciate the students wanting the day and recognizing their peers and others to want to celebrate the holiday. But these days are in fact made up, because when you pull them from a regular school day, they go in June. That's the reality. Because we have 175 days of school. We have to do everything we can to attend all 175 of those days. And so I didn't know what the data would tell us, but what I'm seeing is a strong community push to return the calendar back to what it was. And if I had to make a recommendation, seeing that the staff were split and the students, while they were heavily in favor of the days, also were making comments that they didn't want to make them up, which is not a fact. They do have to make those days up, but it's later in the year. I saw a lot of them things unfold. There were parents who put their kids out to go to school. There were people who forgot that it was a non-work day. So there's some confusion and some complications. That continuity, we had a 3-day week, a 3-day week, and a 4-day week to start the school year because of the way the holidays landed. So my recommendation to all of you, in looking at the fact that we can have students attend those things, have staff attend those things that they celebrate without penalty, but also being mindful of continuity in the number of days in the school year, and June, how we're spilling really late in the year. I think this year our calendar goes till the 20th or so of June, just as it stands without snow days or too many snow days. So my recommendation would be to go back in the focus, in the calendar, so that next year we would, again, recognize those who recognize those holidays, but not have it as a paid holiday for Lewiston Public Schools. So that would be my recommendation with the data that we got.
Member Whitlow.
I'm a bit appalled by this conversation. I think that what we did was equitable. And I would not be in favor of us going back to the way it was. I don't really have a lot more to say, but I might have some more to say if other people have some comments here.
Any other member? Sorry, Member Hawkins.
So I was out in the downtown Thursday, and there was a lot of confusion. And I think a lot of that comes from, this is new. It's a change from what's been in place forever. And people struggle with new things. It takes time to adjust. And that was evident. There are people, why are there so many kids running around down here? I'm like, it's a holiday. We made a move to be more inclusive, to include more opportunities for people to practice however they choose. And I understand that some people seem to find that threatening. But when we have other holidays that are not even an issue, yeah, we have to go a couple more days in June. You still get your summer break. You still get your other holidays. It's not like we're taking anything away from anybody. Yeah, a couple of days in summer. It's 2 days. It's not a week. It's not half your summer break. It's 2 days. And usually the last couple of days in summer anyway are, well, in the school year anyway, aren't exactly, let's get down to the books. Yes, there's some growing pains, but that doesn't mean you stop growing. It means you tough it out, you get used to something different, and you keep going.
Thank you. Member Jensen, and then member Putman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I would disagree with my colleagues so far. I guess you could take two approaches. Thinking about doing holidays as like from a practical sense versus from a recognizing standpoint. From a recognizing standpoint, yeah, it makes sense that we should have Jewish holidays off too. So if that's the philosophy behind how we're thinking, then it does make sense to me. It is the most equitable. I guess I kind of go in the philosophy that we have holidays off for practicality. If a school district is 75% Christian and school on a Christmas day, then most of the school, 75% of the kids going to be gone. It makes no sense to have school. So by practical reasons, you should cancel school and make it a holiday for that reason. So other societally, everybody celebrates New Year's Eve. We don't have the day off to recognize it. We have it because people are not going to show up if we do. And what's the point of having a school then? So I guess for a holiday, when a small percentage of our students celebrate it, what's the threshold that we have for making it a holiday or not? What's the level of disruption to school that's going to be, or the amount of students missing, or teachers? If a third of my kids are missing, I'm probably going to cancel my lessons for the day and just save it for the next day. Just kind of wing it that day or find something else to work on. So thinking about it practicality wise, I would be in favor of reverting back to how we did it before. I don't know if the number of students that we have that celebrate these two holidays reaches the threshold of us going without a day. And I get that days in June are just not as valuable as other days in the year, but days in September are, on the opposite hand, so valuable because those are the building days. Those are really important days. And so I don't want to come out here and it's a touchy subject. I don't want anyone to say like I'm anti-Semitic or something like that, because it's absolutely not the case. I'm not viewing it from recognition standpoint that it shouldn't be recognized. But why do we do holidays in the first place? For practical reasons. And so as far as the information I have, it just seems more practical to allow students to take that day off and celebrate as they need to. Then maybe at school, you could have a conversation between teachers and their students of, well, some of our classmates aren't here. There's a holiday. We can learn a little bit more about it for a little bit, rather than just the whole day off and then nobody really, hears more about it. So I get that not everybody's going to agree, and there are two different philosophies you can kind of approach this with. And so I kind of have mine. So I respect other viewpoints.
Thank you. Member Putman.
So what I get from the start of school, Jake, was a lot of confusion, a lot of disruption. I heard it from kids, I've heard it from parents, heard it from teachers, and I heard it from administrators that this was difficult. I guess in the beginning of the school year, there's a momentum that needs to start and to build to get everybody going and up to speed, and to not have the full week. It was difficult across the board for everybody. That being said, in terms of identifying the holidays, I didn't run across anybody who had an issue with anybody needing to celebrate their personal religious holidays, be it student, be it staff. And I didn't hear anything about any discussion about staff being paid for their personal holiday, their personal religious holiday. So I don't know if that debate's out there or not, but I think there's two distinctives, and that's the general holiday is a national celebration, be it whichever one that we have, New Year's and Washington's birthday and 4th of July if we're in July, but we're not. But people are identifying this as religious holidays, that they feel that it's more of a personal nature than a national celebration. And I was struck by the number of kids that question, why can't we go to school? We're not Jewish. It doesn't faze us. Well, why can't we just go to school? And I think there was a piece of them, and both staff and students, that they were okay with people not being there if it's their religious holiday, that they want to go to school. So I guess there's some sort of compromise in the middle. People are all right with it, identifying it and appreciating everyone's differences and stuff, and they're fine with it. But they want people it doesn't affect. They want to be able to go to school, and teachers want to be able to teach effectively and gain that momentum. And the administrators want to see their expectation after week 1, after week 2, after week 3. So I guess I would favor going back, only with some amendments to it, and that I think it's fine that they get paid. Call it a personal day, call it whatever, but, I think it's reasonable. And I think that I'm okay with people taking that off if they need to take off. Personally, as an individual student's perspective, I don't know how much that impacts them in their curriculum for the entire year. I know as a school district, we need to be, where are we at now, 180 days in school?
175. for students.
175. So, if it doesn't affect the student in that way, I say, be flexible with it and let people do what they need to do. And if the other part of the district wants to come to school, I don't know, some sort of different designation than what they are now.
So right now, as it stands, just to your point, if a staff needs a day off to recognize a holiday that they practice and celebrate, they can use a personal day and take that day now. So that exists. So if this schedule were changed back, it would still be permissible for people to take that day and recognize their faith. That would not be taken off the table.
Member Bowden and then Member Beaupont.
So when I got the survey, I approached it by speaking to both of my daughters about it and how they felt about it. My middle school age daughter spoke about one of her wonderful teachers at the middle school who does celebrate these holidays and took it as an opportunity to teach her about these holidays and how it's the new year for them. And they did something like 8 apples with honey because they ate something sweet to bring in the new year. So for her, she really had this strong conviction that, well, this is important to my teacher. So I'm okay with this day off. I'm okay with this day off. My high schooler had a completely different approach, which was, it was the first 2 weeks of school. And it was kind of inconvenient timing for her to have 2 days off, 2 weeks in a row. She would have preferred to stay in school just because of the class loads that she has and the stuff she was learning. She would have preferred to stay in school. So I think the approach that you're giving us is fair, saying that, anyone who celebrates it is if there's some sort of religious exemption, instead of taking away a personal day from teachers, because I know those are really sacred to them, to be able to have a personal day for whatever reason, maybe we should have some sort of religious exemption day for staff so they can still get paid, but they're not taking one of their personal days. I don't really have an answer for it, but I'm happy to support your suggestion because it sounds like that's what the community is looking for. And like I said, my family was split on it, so I'll support you, Jake. Thanks.
Member Beaupont.
Thank you. I'm torn on this. I see the merits on both sides, but just a couple statistics to show how it influences me. There are 14 million Jews worldwide, and that's 0.2% of the world's population. Of that 14 million, 7.6 million are in the United States, and that makes up about 2.2% of the total population. So I'm looking at the very small numbers of people statistically that it would impact. I've seen, again, in this community, the temples have gone from 3 to 1. I had a rabbi address my class on Judaism and explain the importance of the holidays. I don't know how I'm going to really feel about this till the vote comes up. I want to recognize the importance of it for the people that practice it, but not necessarily extend the school year for those that don't practice it. Are we spending time in class talking about the holidays? I hope we're talking about the Holocaust and the pogroms and so on that made the Jews a persecuted race. Even what is a Jew is in debate. There are Jews for Jesus. There are secular Jews. It's very hard to identify. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And I don't mean to be sound flippant as I say that, but they're good points on both sides. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes. I agree with Member Beaupont. I'm really split on this. I hear the points that Member Jensen made about the practicality of it. And I agree that extending the school year to positively impact a small percentage of our students is inconvenient for a large portion of our community. But I also am a huge proponent of equity and respecting everybody's unique situations and preferences. I'm very split on this. It's a hard decision to make, but I think that when we vote, I'll have to err on the side of equity and inclusion and go in that direction, just because that's sort of the drum I beat constantly anyways. But I too, am very split on this. We have one hand raised. We have two hands raised.
Hi, I'm Kira Soramato again, and I am a teacher at McMahon Elementary. I would like to remind the committee that one of the original arguments behind approving these holidays was that despite possibly not having a large population of Jews who celebrate these holidays in Lewiston, the big argument is that there are not significant populations of Jews almost anywhere at this point because the Holocaust decimated that population. I mean, 80 years ago, 11 million Jews were killed, which would have been significantly more with procreation over 80 years. So literally more than half of the population was just wiped out. So I think looking at an impact basis, like if every community were to take that stance, Judaism would continue to just not be recognized in the tremendous majority of the world. To address Member Potvin's point that, you know, we should only celebrate secular holidays and that those who want to be at school should be allowed to be there. Well, frankly, if that were the case, then I might want to have the option of teaching on Christmas, but that is not an option that I think the school committee is prepared to give me. Maybe I'm wrong about that. And I do understand the argument that many would say, well, Christmas is a secular holiday. Yes, it has been sort of co-opted into a secular holiday, but it is still also a religious holiday. So why don't we work on Christmas, but provide an exemption for those people who celebrate it? I feel like that becomes an equity issue. If we're going to say, well, for Jewish holidays, you know, you can have this exemption, then we should be doing that for all religions. We go to school, but you can have your exemption, not just some. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I feel that looking at it that way does become an equity issue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Rachel Nato.
Hi, we can hear you.
First, I want to tell Dave, if Dave Terrio is there, when I listen to the meeting on YouTube, it's nice and loud, but when I listen to it on Zoom, I can hardly hear anybody. So I hope you're fine.
Thank you. He's going to look into that right now. Thank you.
Okay. So you have a new neighbor, and
Rachel, we're having a hard time hearing you. Your voice keeps coming and going.
Oh, is this better?
Yes.
Okay, I'm speaking into my mic. I have a new next door neighbor, and when I was home for Yom Kippur, or I can't remember which one, he said, so how come you're off today? And I said, well, he was just coming home from work. And I said, well, don't you know today's Yom Kippur? And he's like, yeah, I know it's Yom Kippur. I'm Jewish, but I had to work. So I guess it was a little embarrassing, but you know, I'm Catholic, and I really believe in that we should be celebrating all these holidays and allowing different faiths to celebrate their holidays the same as Christians do. I mean, deep down inside, that's what I believe. But I also don't want to get out of school on like past June 21st when the summer solstice hit, to be honest. But I just wondering, question for Jake. Have you thought about calling the rabbi at Temple Shalom and asking him, like, how many people this would really affect? Like, what are the numbers of Jewish people in our community, and how do they feel about having those holidays off? I mean, I think we're asking our entire community about it, but we're really not asking the people who are greatly affected by it, and that's our Jewish community.
Thank you. Jamie, you can go ahead and speak.
I don't know why my hand's raised. I didn't actually want to speak on this topic.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. Any other school committee member? Oh, now there's more hands up.
Hi.
Hi, Hawa, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, please go ahead.
So, my name is Hawa Abdullah. I'm a Lewiston Public Schools employee. I mean, if we were already recognizing the Jewish holiday for both holidays, and I don't see why not that we continue and to recognize, because there are some Jewish coworkers that I work with that celebrates both holidays. I mean, it does become an equity issue if we are trying to figure out who celebrates Jewish holiday. If we already, passed that from the beginning, why not continue it? And it's only going to be 2 days that's added for the end of the school year. Since the majority of committee already voted, and I think we should just continue and recognize those holidays. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple of things that come to mind to add to the conversation. As a superintendent of public schools, I cannot ask families what faith they practice. It crosses a number of lines, and there's some protections there. So this is a hard one. I'd love to be able to say this many students, this many families are practicing members of the Jewish faith, and that's why this is highly rationalized. Also, so you know, regardless of what holiday conversations we have, as I'm sure yours does also, my inbox fills up with 15 or 20 other emails identifying other portions or other denominations that people would like to have recognized, Christian, Catholic, or otherwise. And so there's a lot of days that people would like to have recognized. It's my estimation that the numbers of students and staff that are practicing members of the Jewish faith are quite low. And so I don't know if that will play into the conversation, but I agree that I was, with many of you who have said you're split on this, this is not an easy topic to bring to you. But I did feel that I had enough input from administration and talking to people as the school year got started off for continuity purposes, that I bring it to you. And again, I'll answer any questions the committee has.
Member Jensen?
It may not be from Superintendent Langless, but I guess how would we define, like, because I know the argument is equity here, but what would we define as equitable? I guess like what would be the boundary between like adding like any religious holiday for any religious organization versus, I guess, what's the threshold here? And what do you guys mean when you say equitable?
Just from a practical stance, like you mentioned, the only thing that I could find was something in the realm of 6 to 7% of your student population celebrating a holiday, which would then be a threshold for you to consider a school closure on that holiday. And I would not estimate that this reaches that threshold.
Any other questions or comments? Is there, oh, go ahead.
And I'm not real sure how to say this, so bear with me for a minute. So I know that we're all about letting those, miss school or whatever to celebrate holidays, and it's not counted against them, I guess, correct? And I think the equitable piece, Luke, would be, we just approved 2 days for the Somali holidays, Eid. prior to us voting to approve the Jewish holidays. So that's part of that. So things have probably changed since I was a kid, right? 20, 30 years ago, in school, if you were Jewish, you didn't really say it. You didn't really talk about it. I don't know if that's still like that. Because you were already secluded in a sense from your peers, because you felt different than everybody else. And that's only because my best friend was Jewish. And that's the only reason I know this. But I don't know if it's different now, right? So if we're saying you can take your holiday off, just don't come to school, and now everybody knows they're Jewish. I don't know if that feeling is still there that it used to be. So when we say equitable, like, why do we have to identify them or segregate them? Or I don't know the right terms to use here, but to say that, well, they're Jewish, so they're gonna take this day off. I don't know what's right or what's wrong, but these are just my experiences in the past that I'm just trying to share with you of what my friend went through back in elementary school. So,
Member Beaumont.
From my friendship group and recent experiences, I think, Member Whitlow, there's more of a Jewish pride now. It's to be worn as a badge of honor to show that, they're coming back and they're not gonna be made to be extinct. My opinion.
Is there a motion? Oh, did you want to speak, Member Damon? No, okay.
I'll make a motion in support of the superintendent's recommendation to go back to where we were.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
No.
Ward 4,
no.
Ward 5,
No.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
City Council,
Yes.
no.
Motion passes 5-4.
Thank you. Agenda item number 11, to receive subcommittee updates from first the Finance Committee Chair Ron Potvin.
Okay, so it was a busy meeting, and we went over multiple pieces. The good news, there's good news and bad news. The good news is the reconciliation of the debt service that we were concerned about, and finding the numbers and making sure that, the debt service was being financed appropriately and that principal was being included was found, and all of the numbers aligned. So it's actually turned out to be just fine. And it's not the scare that we had. We were having difficulty finding things, but found it, and that goes on. So we don't have to worry about that piece. However, the bad news is we still have a, Jake, was this distributed to everybody or just us? The update for your recommendations on the subcommittee update draft. You made recommendations on how to deal with the 1.3 million?
I believe we shared that in a meeting a while back.
Okay, but everybody got it though, right?
I'd want to check.
Yeah. Okay, so anyways, we, Jake, and I don't know if he wants to talk to it, but we came up with a plan to identify the 1.3 million gap that was found during the audit. And Jake's comfortable that, with the way we're going right now, we're not at full staff. We're able to save some monies there. It's not the way to do business, but it is the way it's working right now. He can make some adjustments, freezing certain areas, some different places, choices at his level that he can do. And a portion of what the extra money from the state on the 55%, that gap should be okay to deal with. So we don't have to worry about taking any actions on shortfalls coming forward. That being said, taking a look at the the budget drivers and revenue for next year, for those of you coming back, the gap is getting wider. And, you know, the revenues are going to be limited. State funding. That's what I sound like on there. That's like, I gotta change my voice. Yeah. So, you know, I think the thing to notice is, number one, the expenditures are getting larger and the revenues are getting smaller. It's not a good sign moving forward. And as we keep bringing forward potential items to be considered, it's more difficult to try to reconcile that. And the reality is that, you know, we have two revenue sources, what the state gives us and what we can get from the taxpayers. And we didn't do so great this year with getting anything from the taxpayers. Now, we got the money for the school expansion that was voted on and approved. They were all right with that. But all we got was 400,000. Without even trying, we already are over $4 million in expenditures for next year. And if we're only getting a $1.5 to $2 million increase from the state each year, and 400,000 from the local, that's a pretty big gap. And keep in mind, we have a state mandate to still fulfill next year, going up to the $40,000 minimum for the teachers. Keep in mind that we're operating in a very awkward high fund balance situation, where we, because of COVID and our staffing levels, and we're doing things differently, we're not spending money where we are. More and more money, the budget is being underspent, and we're looking at another sizable chunk of money in the fund balance for next year. Now, the problem is twofold with that. Number one, you can't keep it, you're gonna have to spend it. But number two, you know, you're getting it with a presumption that the budget is designed a certain way to be funded a certain way, but you're not spending the budget in accordance. So the question is, well, why would we run a $95 million budget if we're going to be bringing a $7 million, you know, fund balance in a year's time? So, you know, we went back and forth with it and on how to try to, the other piece too is, don't forget we created a secondary cliff with the COVID funding, $2 million worth. So whether we want to recognize that next year to deal with, I mean, you can pass it off to the second year, but it's going to be there. So you got to deal with that piece. And that's assuming there's nothing else that we need to fund as a school district. So the bottom line is, new items that this committee brings forward has got to result in jobs. That you have to not put a dollar figure to it, but put a job number to it. How many jobs can be reallocated or eliminated to fund any new proposals that come forward? Not saying don't bring new proposals, saying that we got 160 jobs out there that aren't doing anything, and our schools are operating. Now, granted, that's not the way we want to do it. Everyone's doing a lot of extra work to cover those positions. But if you're going to move things forward and you're going to attempt to add something, large pieces, you got to be conscious of what's coming. There's going to be, when you have $7 million in the bank, there's going to be an awful lot of temptation to use that, not to cut jobs, not to reallocate. You know, let's spend it. Just keep in mind, the year is coming up quickly where you're going to have all of maybe $1 million or $2 million in your fund balance, and you have a $5 million gap to have to fill, which is 2.5 mils. And certainly that's not going to go to the taxpayers. So it was a very, I don't know if my fellow members want to add anything. And Jake, if you want to touch upon it, your plan. It's not, we're in a good, reasonable position right now, addressing the shortfall. It shouldn't be an issue. I think it's just a consciousness. There's been some items brought up by the whole committee for consideration, and we tried to work that into some sort of plan, and basically it just came to, are there different ways of doing things with the jobs we have available and open right now that would avail the financial opportunity to do other proposals? So, and so Jake's going to be looking at that and examining it, and then bringing it back to the committee as a whole and to evaluate. So that's where we're at. It just have to be conscious of where we're at right now. We're not in a great situation. The couple of wrong decisions, and we could, either the taxpayers are going to pay heavily, or the school department's going to have to pay heavily in eliminated jobs to try to make ends meet. So I don't know, Jake, if you got anything else.
Yeah, I'll add that, for many years, we've had a large unused fund balance carryover, which has put us in a position of using that to start our budget the following year. In the past couple of years, due to COVID, some cost savings, and also the advantage of using the relief funds, we've been able to save some funds locally, but we've also expended things from a separate funding stream that's eventually going to sunset. And so we're very aware of that sunset. But I share the same concerns that Ron raises, that as time moves forward, we cannot continue to build our budget off of a fund balance carryover if we're going to get more lean with our budget and not ask so much of the community. And so there's a place where those two conversations merge. And so that's some of the work that we're doing, is talking about what that will look like, and being mindful of that when those ESSERF or federal COVID relief funds sunset, if there's not a different funding formula for schools, it's going to hurt. There's going to be a lot of shortfall of funding that we currently have. Now, we got a lot of money from a federal perspective, but we're not using it all for staff or for things that are going to hurt when they dry up. We are doing a lot of facilities work, a lot of infrastructure work that we'd otherwise have to seek out an LCIP for. And so we're upgrading things that our facilities desperately need. And that will better position ourselves for the future, so that we won't have to ask for some of those multi-million-dollar upgrades that are being done to different HVAC systems and things of that nature around our district. And so we're trying to be very smart with the federal dollars that we have that we know will dry up. The fund balance carryover is a delicate balance between what we have right now, because of what we're able to expend from federal dollars, and then how that will cycle through over the next 2 or 3 years. And so we're being real deliberate there. But again, if we keep looking at local increases of $400,000, it's not sustainable, even from just a negotiations contract perspective with multiple collective bargaining groups. So we do have a work cut out for us. I think we're in an okay position because we're aware of these things, and we'll keep working at it.
Thank you. Member Hawkins.
That's one thing I do want, and I say it in the meetings, I'm going to say it over again. Jake and Karen and Stephanie, the work you guys have put in behind the scenes, sorting out this whole mess, I can't stress the rest of this committee strong enough. These guys deserve gift baskets and vacations at a minimum. The work that went into sorting out this mess is not a laughing matter. The things that Ron is talking about and that their superintendent is talking about, these aren't hypothetical what ifs. They are things that are coming. The headlights are on us. I really appreciate their willingness to take a long-term look at how do we fix these things, instead of, well, the next group can deal with it. Because eventually there's not a next group. Eventually things will just shut down if we don't address them. There are things that we know that can be done to help if we have the will to do it. And I'm one of those people, if you've got a problem, fix the problem. Don't sit there and complain. We've been complaining a long time and doing just what we need you to scooch by. There's not much room for scooching anymore. That bench is getting awful short. And I know people aren't going to agree with me. That's the way it is. There are a lot of people in this community that do not understand what exactly is in the school budget, what's in the city budget. It takes time to learn that stuff. It's research and education and talking to people that not everybody has the time to do. But when a superintendent tells you we need this, he's not that. Jake doesn't give us his wish list. He gives us what he needs to get by. How many iterations of the budget did we go through this past time through? Just narrowing out the little bitty chunks that we can let that go this year. That's this year. It's going to come back next year and the year after that. And until we start addressing the things that we're doing to undercut the budget at the same time we're trying to build it, it's just going to keep being a juggling act.
Member Beaupont.
And I'd really like to credit Member Potvin for asking the tough questions. We're all on the same page, but he's not afraid to hold a mirror up to say what are going to be the ramifications of this. He doesn't sugarcoat things. Again, asking the hard questions. So for our very receptive management team, but also for Ron for bringing these things up. And my hat's off to him.
Thank you. Part B, Facilities Committee, presented by Member Damon.
We have not had a meeting recently. However, we do have one on Thursday about a major project at the middle school. And I'll have a lot more to report after that.
Thank you. Curriculum Committee, presented by Member Beaupont.
Thank you. Having been curriculum chair for all of 2 weeks, I haven't really gotten out of the starting block. And with the time of year, we'll see what happens in November, but the plans would be from that point on to consult with Assistant Superintendent Paquette on some of the initiatives that were explored at our last curriculum, getting input from, again, not only administrators and curriculum specialists, but teachers and students, if possible, on how these things are working. I have a little questioning of packaged curriculum things, but I'm sure I'll get over that when I see the validity. Thank you.
Thank you. Policy Committee, Member Whitlow.
Yeah, I see what you did. Now the chair of the policy committee.
I didn't know it was him.
That's fine. Yeah, I haven't done anything with it, but I expect that we'll start looking at some soon. So I'll just go right into negotiations. We're in the middle of the certified professionals, and hopefully by the end of the year we'd have contract.
Thank you. Agenda item number 12, report from City Council representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was not much school-related business from the council the other night, other than to confirm the mayor's nomination of our new school committee member, Member Geneva. So great to see you here. So that's all for council business. I did want to take a time to announce that I will be stepping down as a council rep on the school committee. I'm a teacher, and this school year has been pretty tough. And last few weeks, it kind of hit me pretty hard that I can't keep going the way things are going. I'm just burning myself out. And so need to take some things off my plate and make some more time for myself and my students. So while I've thoroughly enjoyed being back on the committee for 2 months, and I know I've been very grumpy at a lot of meetings here, I have enjoyed my time. I've enjoyed the debates. It is, for the record, it is harder to be on the school committee than the city council. I can confirm that. So you guys, you guys do great work. It's just awesome to be serving with a lot of great people who I've known, before the school committee and gotten to work with previously, and working with Megan and Tanya again, who I absolutely adore those two. So thank you guys for everything. And it's awesome to come back on for a little bit while Superintendent Langlis, you are on board. You probably have like the biggest heart of anybody in this city. I have so much confidence in you. I'm so happy that you're at the helm right now. Based on you guys and our superintendent, I'm very comfortable with the way this district is moving forward. So you guys should all be very proud of your service so far. And I'll be definitely watching.
Thank you, Luke. I hate to see you go. I respect that you need to do this for your career. I definitely respect that, but it's very sad to see you go. We've appreciated having you back. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for attempting to come back in the middle of all of this. I appreciate what you've done, your opinions, and I respect, you taking some time off from all this. So I hope to see you in more of the civil duties, I guess I should say, even after you don't run this term, but we hope to see you again.
Report from the school committee chair. I don't have much to report on, so we'll skip right over that. Agenda item number 14, report from the superintendent.
So I've done a lot of talking tonight. I'll try to keep it brief. Just a quick update regarding mandated vaccines and/or testing. We continue to ask the questions. The answer right now is that OSHA is working on the rules of that directive. And so we just wait for those rules to come to us and then try to figure out what that means. We've asked a number of questions and the response is just the rules aren't available yet. And so there's no movement. A COVID update, I did send out a letter today. It seemed like every time I tried to complete it and send it out last week, I had a new case. And so there's some updates there, but just a couple of quick highlights from that. While we have had a number of COVID positives that have impacted both staff and students, because of masking, we're allowed to, within the rules, mitigate just how many students in any particular grouping need to go home. I think that's helpful. And also we have pool testing, which was delayed slightly because of staffing from our partner on getting enough folks here to do it. They've done walkthroughs through all of our schools. There'll be a correction in, we looked at schedule and adjusting some timeframes, who's going to go when to make sure that fits. And that's going to have a soft start next week is our first pool testing, which is all ready to go. If parents or members of the community are curious about consent, those need to be back into the school. Feel free to reach out to your school administration if you have yet to do that and you wish to do so. I think that's all I have right now.
Agenda item number 15, school committee community announcements. Member Whitlow.
This Saturday, October 2nd, the culinary program, the Green Ladle, will be having their annual open house. And this is always really exciting. It's from 10:30 to 12, I think. And I think it's maybe $15 a person and you can go in and eat as much food as you want. And it's amazing. A couple of years ago before COVID, my husband and I went and they had even like shark and like just, creme brulee and just all kinds of random stuff, tacos. I mean, it was amazing. We left super full, but it's so great and the food's delicious. And it just showcases our culinary students. So I hope people get to go. And this year, it's going to be a portion of it outside too, I think, for spacing, and there's going to be music and food truck. So I think it's a little bit bigger than it was before. So it'll be exciting. So this is also on Saturday, so we'll see how that works. For members of the community who live in the downtown or are lower income and have pets that need shots or a chip or rabies vaccination in Kennedy Park on Saturday, Androscoggin Humane Society is having a vaccine clinic. So anybody in the community with an animal that needs that care can show up. It's very simple. They ask basic questions and you can get that care for free.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Member Damon?
The expansion committee at the high school had a meeting last week and things are coming along very nicely. We're a little bit behind schedule, although we're still right on budget. There's been some supply chain issues that have held things up a bit, which is across the whole construction industry. But one of the things that we were looking at is potentially trying to set a date, possibly the week of November the 8th. It's a bit of a short week because Veterans Day is at the end there. But to try to have the current school committee, the newly elected school committee, and previous members of the school committee that were involved with the expansion to sort of have a private walkthrough. It's pretty exciting where we're at with that. Hopefully by then we'll be 95% finished with it. It's really gonna start to show it off. So I'd like to, try to get a sense of, folks' availability for sometime maybe the 8th, 9th, or 10th of that week at 5:30 or whatever after school is out. But to have a chance to really see what we've built and what kind of an asset this is going to be to the community and to the students and everything going forward. And I think it really encompasses three school boards. That's a chance for us to also get to maybe touch base with the newest elected members as well. So there's something I'll get together with Jake and Karen about that, but that's something that we would like to do. So it's that week of, I'm thinking that week of the 8th, we will know by then the election will be over, and and there will be an open house. At some point, there will be an open house for the community, but we felt that this was a better chance for the folks that are more boots on the ground to really see what we came up with.
I'm excited to see the progress. I've been following the pictures, and it's knowing what it looked like before and then seeing the pictures. In some ways it's easy to see what's changed, and in other ways, like getting the orientation is off in pictures. So I'm excited to see it in person. Oh, yep, go ahead.
Just one more that I know that came to light last week, pun intended. It's been a long time coming, but organizing and getting the lights on the baseball multi-use field. When that was built, the wires were put in, the poles were, the lower part of the poles were put in the ground, all ready to go for lights, and those were powered up last week. And that is, according to Mr. Fuller, a bit of a game changer, just with things getting so dark in Maine, especially in our seasons. The ability to flip those lights on for community use and for school use is another great plus for our community.
Agenda item number 16 is future agenda items. Member Beauplan.
Thank you. I'd like Jake to update us on the central office staff and vaccination. When I first read about that in the paper at a 19% rate, I almost fell out of the chair. Then I realized there are a lot of other variables. There's a very small sample and possibly errors in the way it was interpreted, but the ramifications of that just are stunning. So I hope we'll have better figures for the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Potman.
Not really to do with that, just question of clarification. Did you happen to go over the consent agenda tonight? I don't remember that.
We did, yes.
You did?
Yep.
Okay, I just want to double check.
Member Whitlow.
I just,
Mike.
yeah, I just want to make sure that we bring, I know what I'm going to say here, bring back the dress code policy, please, as soon as possible.
Oh, okay. Agenda item number 17 is to enter into executive session to discuss negotiations in accordance with 1 MRSA 405D. I think that's a D. I scribbled it out by accident.
So moved.
Second,
Ward 1,
yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Abstain?
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
City Council.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
School committee will enter executive session at 8:09 PM. She abstained.